Good evening, everybody. It is once again so good to see you all tonight. Again, without Taylor Willis, my music selection is always a bit questionable, so I apologize in advance. We are excited to have you all here tonight to give you an update on what's been happening and what our plan is for APH as we move forward over the course of the next semester. And I invite everyone, if we have received a bunch of questions through prior, so we have them in the queue to ask those questions. But if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I will promise that we will get to as many, if not all of them. And we will make sure we respond to you if we do not answer it tonight. We will also be sending out a recording of this in the newsletter tomorrow. Just in case there are families members that weren't able to hear us tonight, and we want to make sure we will share this information with them. So without further ado, I'll invite Molly to get us started.
Thank you, Dean. Welcome to everyone. Always a pleasure to see everyone. I am looking forward, as I'm sure we all are, to the day when we all see each other in person. But I want to just start by saying thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your support and partnership with your daughters as we navigate the year that we're in right now. Thank you for your trust. One of the things that I very much appreciated in the comments as I reviewed the survey results was not only your very thoughtful questions and concerns, but also the amount of trust that you have placed in us at the school. And we work very hard every day to make sure that we continue to earn that trust. And so again, thank you for that. I don't have a lot of words. I think the most important thing is really, as we talk about coming back, which we have made a decision as a school to return in a full in-person model beginning the 22nd of March. And the thing that is really important for us, how are we going to navigate that as a community? Students, parents, teachers, staff, how are we going to do that? How are we going to continue to stay safe? We have done an unbelievable job thus far, and I know that we can do this as we move forward. So we want to answer your questions. We want to hear your feedback, and then we're going to move forward from there. So I know that Dean, from his journalist days, does a wonderful job of moving us through all of this, and would very much love to have him started with the questions.
Great. Thanks, Molly. Let's start with you, Jan. If you can talk a little bit about the why of this process and how we're hearing student voices.
Sure. So hello, everyone. It's really nice to see you. So if you remember, a whole year ago, schools got forced into a fully virtual learning environment, which wasn't great for anyone. And as our planning team met over the summer to talk about how we would reopen in the fall, we reached out to say, what are you the most comfortable with? We knew that actually at that time, we had the space and the wherewithal to bring everybody back fully in person in the fall. But we also recognized the worry, not only on the part of our faculty and staff, but also on the part of families. And so we opted for the hybrid learning model. Part of that because we wanted to see how good we were at the protocol. We had it all, things always look great on paper, but you never know how they're going to play out. And what we have discovered actually is that our protocols do work. We have been very fortunate. Of the 2 cases that where people were on the campus and tested positive for COVID, there was no spread. We did the contact tracing and there was no spread. And we think that we thank you because you all have been so great about working with your students around safety and protocols, and we know our ones at school are working. You might remember that between Thanksgiving and the winter break, we opened up and said if students to come more fully in person because they were feeling behind in their work, they could do so. And we had a number of students opt to do that. And really from that point forward, we had more and more students asking us from an academic standpoint if they could come on their non-cohort weeks, because they were feeling the challenge of not seeing their teachers every week and not being able to connect with other parts of the school community, whether it was the counseling services, campus ministry, student life, athletics, those kinds of things. But then we also began to see something that was more worrisome. Much like we've seen in the national trends, we were seeing the uptick of student visits to our counseling offices, students who were experiencing stress and anxiety due to some of the separation and worry. And when students began to start to talk about feeling helpless and really not knowing how to manage everything that was on their plates, we began to get concerned. And so when we had our faculty professional day just 2 weeks ago, first of all, I want to say, if you don't know it already, your daughters have an extraordinary team of faculty who have their backs every day. And we came together as a faculty and staff group and said, you know what, getting this feedback, and while we might be able to make like little improvements here in workload and little improvements here in student engagement in classes, what we think they really need is to be back together, to have that opportunity if they want it. And so we have decided, and we talked through, what our protocols are, what we would have to do to step up enforcement of those with larger numbers of students on campus. It's very easy to get lax in protocols if you're not careful. So we walked through all of those things. We've put out a survey to the students just today to say, what are the things that you really need us to pay attention to that you're worried about? We've asked you those same questions. And feel that with that feedback, that we can do this safely. And we still, though, are allowing the fully virtual option for students for whom it's not a choice to come back fully in person. So that's how we got here.
Thank you, Jan. Molly, I'm going to send this question over to you regarding protocols. After the Thanksgiving and winter breaks, APH had a fully virtual week before in-person classes started again. Is that the plan for the same? Are we planning to do the same thing after this spring break?
Great question. The answer is no. And the reason for the no is that we also have protocols in place for travel. So if students, families are making the decision to travel over the winter break, the 2 weeks in March, starting on Friday, they will just need to follow our travel protocols. So that would require negative testing when they return, or a 10-day quarantine. So if that is the choice of families, then we ask that they do that. I think we had this discussion as a large group, and part of the thing that we did not want to do is felt like a penalty to those students who were not traveling and who have been, even over the holiday break, but over this one, who have made the choice to remain with their home or not to travel, and that they would then have yet another week that they would not be able to be fully in person. So again, we allow and understand that families are making choices for themselves, and they would just have to follow the travel protocols.
Okay, thank you. Jan, this question is for you. Will APH keep in mind that this is yet another transition for students? How will faculty adapt?
Yes, absolutely. We do recognize that with change comes stress. And so we've already started to talk about what that week of March 22nd actually looks like. We imagine that as students come back, so they've raised a couple of interesting concerns, which have been fascinating. For some of them, they have said, oh my goodness, I haven't seen some of my peers in other classes hardly at all this year. I'm not sure how I'm going to manage, navigating all of those relationships in addition to the distancing and the masking and all of those other kinds of things. So we do imagine that there'll be stress. We already have a major test and assessment calendar in place where we try to track those major crunch times for work, but we'll be talking tomorrow in the faculty meeting about some of the feedback we're getting from students about whether that's working as effectively or not right now, and ways in which we might space things out a little bit more. So we're talking about that. We are also talking about, one of the very first things they will do on campus that day is meet an advisory to sort of get the rules for engagement for being back in person with more people around. And we'll also be planning some shifts in the schedule that week in terms of the non-academic time to do some really some fun activity to get people bonded and back together.
Great. Thanks, Jan. A protocol question for you, Molly. So how will the school continue to stay on top of social distancing and mask wearing? My daughter says she's witnessed students sometimes removing masks in the study rooms or out of the way spaces. What are your plans for stepping up enforcement of the protocols with even more students on campus?
Was very much part of, as Jen talked about, our professional development and our subsequent conversations with our faculty and our staff. We understand that part of what we as adults need to do as we move to this approach is to enforce and monitor and be very visible for students. Somehow they forget sometimes they're supposed to wear masks, I know. But we have already had those conversations about being more present in and around the building. We are removing doors from different rooms to make sure that we don't have kids squirreling away in spaces. As you know, that's part of the wonderful part of our school is that we have these spaces that they can go and they can study and do those kinds of things. They also there's a lot of them. So we'll be removing some doors, we'll be making spaces more open, and again, having our faculty and staff be very present. We've already set up those protocols and that monitoring. We do have a process through my APH where we do note infractions of protocol, much like infractions of dress code. So students caught not wearing masks are written up. If there is, I think it's at 3, if it's noted 3 times, there are calls home to parents and there are students sent home, that they will lose the privilege of being in school if they can't continue to be mindful of and follow the protocols and procedures.
Molly, you mentioned dress code. I will go to a
favorite topic.
I will go. We had a question asked about dress code. Maybe not at the end of, maybe not for March, but next year, are we still intending to have a dress code when we start back up again at Penguin Hall?
In September?
In September.
In September and in March. So the dress code is fully in effect. We're fully back and it's fully in effect. It never really was not in effect. We have not enforced it, and I think we've kind of, that one we have let go, an adult population. But it is my intention, and as we've had some of these conversations, we'll have more, that dress code, it will be expected that students will be in dress code as they return campus beginning in the 22nd of March. There's no reason for, and don't let your daughters tell you that they're cold anymore, because we have made all of the facilities changes to ensure that that is not the case. They do not need to wear hats in the building. They do not need to wear their coats in the building. And so if they're telling you that, then please call, email me, and I will ensure that that's not the case.
Thank you. Jan, this one's for you. Can exceptions be made for families interested in continuing a hybrid model due to work or family constraints? Or, is there an option for families to choose the hybrid model?
We're actually trying to keep it to the 2 models, to fully virtual, fully in person. For the teachers in particular, and if you think about the way you have to plan the pacing of classes to not know week to week who's in, who's out, and how that works. I mean, we've tried to navigate it through the hybrid and fully virtual this semester. It doesn't work perfectly. And so we are trying to keep it to the 2 systems. That being said, one of the ways in which Zoom has worked for us very well has been, if a student is sick, they feel like they could do work, but coming to sit in school all day is not something they feel like they could do. They have been able to Zoom into classes. That will continue to be true. We've been very fortunate. We haven't even had the Penguin Play this year or, outbreaks of anything else. And we'd like to keep it that way. So students will have that option. Zoom will also be the option for those students. I know we have some seniors in particular right now who are visiting some of the campuses to which they've been accepted, and then they have to come back. And when they follow the travel protocols, it means that they're going to have to be virtual for a few days. So that kind of wiggle room is allowed. But we are, for the sake of the teachers, really working to either do fully in person or on Zoom. If there's some special circumstance that we don't know about, please email us and let us know.
Great. There was a question, Molly. In the last town hall, you spoke of waiting until teachers were going to be vaccinated before returning for a more fully in-person learning. What's changed?
The distribution and the governor and his ability to distribute the vaccine, I think, is probably the biggest thing. When we had the last town hall, that was the best information we had at the time, and so based on that, we were hoping that to be the case. At this point, given some of the issues that have happened, that is not. We're not sure when that is going to happen, and we can't use that as the stake in the sand for doing that. I will, though, I'm sure many of you have heard, even just today, the announcement by the governor that all K-12 employees are eligible as of March 11th for the vaccine. So then it's being able to get an appointment for that. I also at about 6 o'clock this evening got a text from the Board of Health in Wenham, who asked if I would like assistance getting our faculty and staff the COVID vaccine. I said, no, we're good. But no, I really said, yes, absolutely. I gave her the number of doses and number of employees that would be covered by that. So to all our faculty and staff who are hearing this for the first time, I am working with the Board of Health, who I have been for all these months. So we hope to continue that on parallel tracks, but we just can't have the go, no go decision.
Thanks. We're excited that you were on the phone with the Board of Health today. That's always a good sign. Everyone wants vaccines for Wenham and for our faculty and staff. Jan, there was a question that came up just now. If a student starts out fully virtual, but then after a while feels more comfortable and changes their mind, can they then go back to fully in person?
Yeah, we recognize that we have a few students and families who want to tread a little carefully initially as they wrap their heads around more fully in-person learning. So for sure, if you choose fully virtual right now, but as you watch things unfold over the next several weeks and you say, you know what, I think I feel okay about being back fully in person. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Molly, how will the school manage spaces like the bistro, breakout spaces, seating areas with more students on campus? And maybe you could even talk about ventilation too.
Sure. So when we were doing our planning back this summer, we planned for a fully in-person learning situation. I think we talked about that on previous town halls. And as Jan mentioned, we had the fully in-person, fully virtual, and the hybrid model. Being able to move among and between all of those at any time has been one of our luxuries and one of our blessings, given the amount of space that we have. So always in our planning of classroom assignments, classroom setup, furniture, and the like, we have the ability to distance under the DESE guidelines, which are the guidelines which we're following. We also have, as most of you know who have been on the campus, outside almost every classroom there's a breakout space, so we have kind of overflow space and teachers use that anyway, just as part of our classroom modeling for discussions and smaller group work. So those are always spaces that are available. So from a classroom perspective, again, we had already planned this reality, and so now it is just here. In terms of the bistro, we had put additional safety measures in place in the bistro. We limited each table to two people to each table versus 5, and there are plastic barriers between those 2 people. During I think it was in the winter break, we actually converted our student lounge to Bistro 2. So now that is seating as well. That gave us additional seating on the same floor. That has always, since our beginning, it had always been intended to be an overflow space for the dining as we continue to grow as a school. So that was there. So now we've done that. And what we've done is created kind of smaller student lounges around the building, and which is less students in any one place at one time. So it worked out well. We will be scheduling out lunches during the time between 12 and 1. So we will have multiple lunches happening. Students will need to be at their assigned lunch, which will make sure that those spaces are not overcrowded. We also have our outdoor space, which has been wonderful. We have several really hardy girls who have eaten outside every single day that they're on campus and are in gazebo and at our picnic tables and things like that, as long as they can move through the snow. Those spaces are also available all the time. We also have our 40 by 40 tent, which is a heated tent. We put that up in the summer, at the end of the summer. So that is a space that is also available for students if they want to be outside during lunch period or in other areas, times that are not in class period. So I think, in terms of our space, we have it and know how to use it, I guess is what I would say. Ventilation over the past, 6 or so weeks, in general, given our building construction, without doing anything and with all of the windows and doors closed, we have an air exchange in our building of 2 to 4 times per hour. Just the Chan School of Public Health is really going to the authority that the DESC is listening to on this, as us, recommends a minimum of 4, and 6 is the ideal. So even without doing anything, we are already, with everything closed up, because we are leaking an old building, we have a 2 to 4 exchange. We have spent the last, like I said, about 6 weeks or so installing ventilation in exhaust fans in each of the classrooms, which has now moved. We were able to close all of those windows. So this is why students do not need to wear coats indoor. And that has given us exchange of, right now, I think we're at 8 times exchange per hour. All of open spaces and common spaces in the building, bathrooms and elevator lobbies are all on a constant running exhaust from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Bathrooms exchange at 10 times per hour. I'm sure this is fascinating to everyone. Exhaust fans in the bistro kitchen run continuously from open till close. Learning commons and the student lounge, or now Bistro 2, is exchanging at 6 times per hour with the help of its ventilation system. So those are things that are, I think that's most of the spaces in the building. So all of that is without opening any window, that we have that much air that's moving through. In terms of overall space, just to give you a sense of it, we are currently occupying 80,000 square feet. So that's 2 acres of space under roof. That's a lot of space for 200 people. And we don't even quite have 2 people there every day. That's about 400 square feet of space per person that is available. So we have the space to spread out. Right now, the recommended for US high schools, the recommended is about 160 square feet. So in terms of how we exceed all of these recommendations, both space as well as ventilation, I feel, I'm very glad and comfortable sharing all of that information with you.
Molly, one of our parents said that they were super happy they were getting so much information about ventilation. So thank you. Even if you
happy to chat about it anytime with anyone if you want to do it offline.
Great. Jan, I have a couple quick questions for you, or I think they might be quick. Will Zooming into class still be an option if my student usually attends in person but needs to stay home due to illness or waiting for a test due to travel?
Mr. Savalas, you weren't listening. I covered that. But anyway, yes. Yeah.
Ms. Healy, the question got asked again, so I'm just, maybe someone didn't hear you.
Yes, absolutely. Again, one of the great advantages to Zoom has been that when students are feeling under the weather, they can stay home and Zoom into their classes. And yes, it is also available for those students who need to travel. Like I said, we've got some seniors right now who are very anxiously going to visit the schools to which they were accepted, and they know they have to follow the travel protocols. So,
Okay,
yeah.
great. And then the other question, Jan, which is in sort of connection, is if we have to choose between being fully in person or fully virtual, my daughter will have to be fully virtual in order to feel safe. If that happens, would it still be okay for her to come to school to get extra help from teachers in the afternoon? She says it's easier to meet with teachers in person after school than over Zoom.
Um, Yeah, our teachers are available every afternoon from 3 to 4, as they always have been. So it is possible if you'd like your student to do that. I mean, they will not be alone in the building. Obviously, there will be other teachers and students around. But if that's the arrangement that works for your family, as you make decisions around that, we can certainly accommodate that. I know it is hard. Students have said that sometimes it's hard to zoom in to resource times because they never know like if they're Zoom bombing something. And so I can totally understand that.
Great, thank you for both of those answers, Jan. Um, Molly, there's a question about a couple of questions about transportation. One of the questions, hold on, was let's see. Thank you so much for all your hard work to organize all of the protocols. How will the bus routes be adjusted on each route?
So as you can imagine, so the Department of Education, DESE is, we continue to work with them and we have been since back last March regarding protocols and requirements. Although we're not required to, they do have good guidance and they have teams of experts that they're helping to inform them. So we have continued to follow those guidelines. About 4 weeks ago, maybe about that time, 3 to 4 weeks ago, the Department of Education came out on revised guidelines regarding transportation. So the number of students who can be on the buses that we currently have has increased. And there are requirements for and recommendations for opening of windows and things like that. So we have looked at all of the numbers for our buses. So we're still in compliance with those guidelines and any adjustments that we need to make again with opening windows and what happens on those buses. The students and the drivers are fully aware of, the students will be aware of, and the drivers are aware. We continuously, for those, just as a refresher and reminder, the buses are every day cleaned inside. They are wiped down, they are sanitized, there's sanitizers on those buses. Everybody has to wear masks, windows are open. So we have been very pleased with, again, compliance of those protocols right along.
So there was another question about that too, about social distance protocols managed for kids using transportation. I think I just want to restate that those have been adjusted.
Yes.
And we will still, our students have been so responsible in the vans, wearing their masks, staying socially distanced. Our drivers have been keeping the windows open. So we appreciate everyone's efforts to continue that, especially as we work to get everyone on board in the next few weeks. So a question for you, Jan, does a return to more fully in-person learning mean that end of year events will happen this year?
Yes, so we have had end of year events on the calendar all along and have just been monitoring as we go. So for those of you who don't know, the symposium week that typically happens between first and second semester has now been moved to the end of the year. It may look a little different this year, but that's happening at the end of the year. We will have our baccalaureate and graduation ceremonies. We met that group of us met today to talk about the planning, and there'll be more information coming out. To senior parents, we are having a spring arts festival that will include both the visual and performing arts. May. We have set the seniors loose, working with Ms. Patel, the faculty advisor, and some parent volunteers to plan a prom that will happen at APH. And so they are planning the safety measures around that in addition to the fun. And we have asked in the student survey for students to give us some ideas of some of the things they'd like to see. Again, as we bring students back and reimagine some of the space, we know that so much of what they've been missing and so much of what they've been craving are just some downtime together to do something fun. And so we're soliciting some ideas from them to plan those things.
Okay, Jan. So the other question was about prom.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so like I said, the prom date is set. It's right now, it's sitting at Saturday, May 22nd. So a Saturday night, which has not done that before. It will be on campus. We have the seniors are working to find out who wants to serve as members of a prom committee to work with Ms. Patel and the parents who have volunteered to help out. There already going to be some fun lighting up from the concert the night before because the festival is on May 21st, which is the Friday night. So more to come on that. They are very excited.
Great. Molly, can you talk a little bit about senior events like graduation and baccalaureate? There's a question about the date, if it's definite. Can you share that info?
Yes, so as Jan mentioned, so we have met several times actually around graduation and baccalaureate. Baccalaureate has been set. It is on June 10th. It's a Thursday. That is at 5 o'clock. There may be a pre-event, but for parents, 5 o'clock is the event time. Graduation is June 11th, the Friday, June 11th. Is that right? And it's at 3 o'clock. So that's 3 in the afternoon. We try and set those times just so parents are aware that, you know, if they want to do any events afterward, go out to dinner, things like that with family or friends, that they can usually. We'll have graduation last maybe a little over an hour, and then we have a reception after that. So the students can do their pictures and kind of say their goodbyes. And then by about 5:30 or so, folks are gone. I don't know at this point what kinds of restrictions we will have to abide by as we go into graduation. Last year, as some of you know, we ended up moving graduation from June until August. We are very confident that we can have it in June, and we'll do that. I do encourage all of your daughters. I see, you know, many, not just seniors on this, but to come and join and be part of and wish well to their schoolmates. So I really encourage that people, it is not been made mandatory, but it's, for me, it's as close to mandatory as I can get, I think. But I think I'd really like to encourage that all of the students and support, because I'm sure they would love the same as they look across, in our case, across the grass to get their diplomas. So.
The prom is a junior senior prom.
Yes.
There were a couple of questions about interest in volunteering. Parents, if you're interested in volunteering, Ms. Patel is the one to reach out to. Is that right?
Yeah, I would add that we had a meeting with a senior class representative today. I'm a big advocate of self-advocacy, and the students, this is their prom. The juniors and seniors, it's their prom. We asked them to put together their committees, and I so appreciate the parent offering of assistance to that. I would like to ask that they reach out and ask for that help if they need it. Um, and let's let them kind of organize themselves. So and Ms. Patel will be our contact in the school, and then, you know, she can help to organize and provide resources and things to parents on how we go about that. So I would expect that for all of those who are interested in helping out, and it's a really cool place to have a party. So I can only imagine how, you know, it's really fun to put one together. But I'd like to see if we can let the seniors start to get themselves organized around what do they want and reach out for some help.
Thank you. There's a question that just came up, sort of asking again a little bit more clarity. You know, the comment is very thoughtful. We as a country and a community are so close to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I want to be sure this isn't a premature move. I also hear that kids are scared and see physical distancing as doesn't happen. How would you want to respond to that, Molly?
So I think it's a very legitimate concern. I also think that as Jan talked about earlier and in the beginning of why we're doing this now, is some of the other things, and Jan, maybe you can speak again to these issues, that the other things that we are seeing are equally or more so concerning to us around the students and their health and their well-being. And I do believe that we are able to manage. I think we've shown that up till now. We're able to manage things like, you know, what happens should there be a case on campus. We've had two, and we've had no spread from that. So all of our protocols are working. I think that people have been really good. If you're not feeling well, COVID or not, stay home. So even, you know, again, erring on the side of caution has been a really wonderful thing. The use of MedBot has been really well. That will continue. We're not giving that up. And so I think that as we look at, you know, all of the health concerns, COVID being one of them, but mental health and social and emotional well-being other ones, we really feel like we have to balance our decision making around this, and this is the decision that we felt was best. We do understand, and it's not to minimize the concerns that some students and families are feeling and may be at higher risk than others. And that's why we invite you to choose a virtual approach, and we will stay vigilant about including all of those students in the learning and in the co-curricular portions of the school. So it's not like you're just going to be kind of sitting there on the wall. We work very hard to make sure that those students are part of the learning and of the community as best as we can in 2D. Jen, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think for us, one of the things is we came together as a faculty, and believe me, we have all the same worries and questions that you do. But one of the things that really tipped the scales for us as a faculty was in hearing from our counselor, from Dr. Hidalgo and Ms. Clark, who keep us in the loop about just sort of general trends and what they're seeing. And I know from sitting at the academic desk, I will tell you that the stress that students were feeling, the number of students who have sought support from outside support for things around anxiety and depression, the suicidal ideation we've seen in our own school this year is stunning. It's not something we've seen before. And, I hate to lay that sort of heavy thing on you, but it is worrisome. And so I think that we see ourselves as educators, as social workers, and people who are here to support your children. And we take that very seriously. And in our estimation, based on what we're seeing, and also knowing how great your kids are when they're at school about respecting the protocols. Yes. Do they slip up sometimes? Absolutely. Are they compliant when we say something to them? Absolutely. We do feel like we can manage this. And so that was a lot of what weighed into the decision as well.
Thank you both so much. I know that there's a lot of comments that have come in sort of very excited about our students coming back and regarding their mental health and acknowledging that. So I appreciate the reiterating that and sharing that with our community. And we're all in this together and all feeling similar things, but we felt that the strongest, most important thing was to come together for our kids as we've been focused. Quick question. We have about 15 more minutes and there's a lot more questions, so I'll try to get to them as quickly as we can. What does sports look like this spring? Does returning to in-person learning mean that APH will play other teams in sports?
So I'll take that one,
Yeah.
Dean. So we will be playing 4 sports this year. We have softball, tennis, lacrosse. We're going to do volleyball again this spring, and we also have kind of a shift over from basketball, 4.5, kind of 5 sports. We will not be, at least at this point, we don't have on the roster games with other schools. We are in conversations with them, but because of they're not quite sure what their protocols and what their schedules are yet. So we're working on it. So that's a work in process. Spring season does start on March 22nd. I have to say, I am thrilled. We have, I think at last count, around 90 of our students are on those 4 teams. So we have some really, really big teams, which allows us to do some really great intramural kind of athletics. So already we have scheduled rosters for games within, as intramural teams. So those have already been scheduled as part of it. So there'll be practice as well as intramural events. So we are working to make this as robust as possible. As we can nail down some of the schools for games, we certainly will do that. And we're doing that on all fronts. But the number of students on each of these is really, I mean, there's about 20 or so on each of the teams or more.
That's awesome. Jan, can you answer? I know we're talking about bringing students back. How are we going to adjust, not the schedule, but what are some of the things that we're going to be doing over the break to prepare for everyone's return, and also to help support our students that maybe are feeling, there was a question that came up about some of the, they're uncomfortable with either situation. How can we help them address those frustrations, get more comfortable within the school, day?
Great, thank you. So like I said, there is a student survey out right now that went out just prior to this meeting. We've had about 25 students answer it so far. I've been keeping an eye on it as we've gone along, where we have asked them questions about as they think about coming back, what are some of those concerns? What can we help? What can we support? We know already that we will have a number of students who will need and want the support from our counselors that they've had all along, but they have the opportunity to have that in person. We know that we have students who need further academic support. And so the academic schedule and the rotation of classes will not change. They are staying an hour long. We're not going to make them any longer. We're not reverting back to the 10-day rotation. We are going to keep the schedule consistent. We are going to reimagine, if the students need us to, the non-academic time. We've asked them questions. That time includes things like grade level meetings, house meetings, clubs and activities, leadership. What are those things that they need us paying attention to in those times to help support them as they go along. So as we get the results from the survey, we'll have some preliminary conversation with faculty tomorrow. We have meetings on Thursday afternoon, and then the team will be working over the 2 weeks of spring break to not only, continue to ready the physical plant to welcome everybody back, but also to think about what does that first week look like, and what are the weeks after that look like as we work to support students. So we're taking our lead from your kids. So it's we're gathering information now, and we'll have more information about that as we get all of those responses.
Great. Quickly, my student is concerned about the workload, that it will now increase. What can you say about that, Jan?
Yeah, this one's coming up. So in the hybrid model, interesting, we have some students who say nothing has really changed for them, but we do have students who say, you know what, it feels like I have more work. Like when we're in person, our teachers assign way more work because we're sitting in front of them. They're also saying they feel like their weekend workloads have increased, and that's worrisome to them. We have a policy when we go to breaks that teachers are allowed to assign one night of homework. They can't assign huge amounts over breaks. I'm getting some feedback today that that's happening, but that it's all due at the same time. So we're going to talk about that too, and spread some of that out. And it's gonna take us a little while to balance it, but again, have your students, they're filling out the survey, have them talking to advisors. If you feel like your daughter's not super great at self-advocating or is sometimes a little timid to ask for what they want, have them you email. Your daughter's advisor, your child's advisor is your point person too. So please reach out and say, hey, so and so is coming home and they're saying this. Can you help me understand this? Where are we with this? And we will continue to work this out. It's going to be a little bumpy probably at first as we do this, but I think everybody's heart's in the right place. These teachers want nothing more than to support your kids, have them have a happy, healthy spring.
Thank you. Molly, there was a quick question about what is the non-mandatory mandatory time for the kids to be at graduation? What were the dates?
Thank you for that question. I really appreciate that. I would love that that all students show up for both baccalaureate and graduation. If there has to be a choice between the two, I think graduation is critically important. But baccalaureate is really that time where I think they have an opportunity to kind of reflect on their time at school, and I really appreciate that that time as well. So they have different feels. They have different. There's different themes that happen during each one of them. So 5 o'clock is baccalaureate for 5 o'clock is baccalaureate, and then on Thursday, and then 3 o'clock is graduation on Friday. And by the way, there's food after both of them, so that helps and makes a difference. I just wanted to let you know.
Right, because we'll be outside, so it makes it even easier. So one quick question, Molly, was about, there was a question that was asked about seating. The bistro is still seating 2 to a table, but there was a question, is there any thought to allow more students to sit together given social issues?
So that is a great question. And the answer is really no, because we can't do both of those things. Right now, I don't have the physical plexiglass in a configuration that allows for more than students at a table. So we have plexiglass that splits a table in two. I would have to have new plexi made that did something else. I would because our lunches are only about 30 minutes, and I generally don't see kids there much more than 15. I'd rather have us lean into how we can otherwise deal with social issues, but not necessarily at the table where they are. That is the opportunity that we do allow them to remove a mask. So again, we're not looking to have those opportunities where masks are down. So I think if we can do something else after lunch, I think that's a better idea.
And the sports season starts the
22nd.
22nd, and that's when the
So if
vans will
your
then.
daughters are not aware of that, it does start. Yes, so you just cut out for a minute. So vans will be reverting back to their normal 5:15 schedule, so that students can do sports and then can do that. It will be lighter out, so I think that will also be helpful.
Great. There was a question about prom that was a good one. Is there a possibility there would be a promenade so parents can see their daughters and their dates dressed up?
I think that's a great idea. We actually, that last year because we didn't have a prom, but the year before, we actually had many of the seniors and their dates, junior seniors and their dates actually came to Penguin Hall to take their pictures before they went on to Tupper Hall, which is at Endicott, which is where they had their prom. So it was really wonderful to see them on the stairs, inside, outside, and I think that is something that would be great if we could scale that to be able to do that. So love the idea, and we'll pass that along.
Great. I think we've hit most of the questions. Oh, protocols in cases. Can you talk about what are our protocols in case there is a case? Like what happens? What do we do? You know, especially now that we're getting back. We don't anticipate there will be, but just in
But we're ready if there were one, know what to do. So we do immediate contact tracing. So it depends on, you know, where it is. If a student lets us know before they come to school that, you know, they're testing positive, then, you know, the way the protocol works is you look back 48 hours, and for there you look at anybody that they've been in contact with those 48 hours, and all those people are notified. They would all be then asked to remain home, be tested, and then go through a quarantine period. That is what we have done in the 2 cases that we've had. Anybody who was in that contact tracing net was notified first, including the adults in that. We then let the whole community know that if you hadn't heard otherwise, you were not part of that contact tracing. And then, and if it's, you know, if it happens in school, for some reason, student had a test, got results, or found out that they had been exposed to someone, we have several offices and areas where those students are quarantined immediately so they can be picked up and leave campus. And then again, we would do the same contact tracing the 48 hours back, and then we would notify everyone to let them know when they would all be tested. We get copies of all those tests, and then students are allowed to return.
Thank you. Jan, is the schedule going to stay the same, or will we revert to the old schedule in March?
Now we're keep the same schedule that we have, because recognize that we do have students who will choose to or continue to be fully virtual. And so in order to certainly minimize the amount of change and impact on everybody, but also be kind to those students who are on Zoom, we were going to keep the schedule the same with the hour-long classes. So we're not going to change that. And quite frankly, I don't want to have to do that work again. So that's just selfish on my part. We will though. So the one thing that the students have gotten used to is that we have that hour-long lunch resource block. And when they're at school, because we haven't had that many kids there, or, you know, or only half of a cohort, they've gotten pretty used to not having to adhere to a lunch period. They all get to go down at first lunch because there's so much seating that they can sit there and everybody can have lunch at the same time. It's not going to be true come March 22nd. They're going to have to adhere to the lunch period in order for us to keep everybody distanced. But that's the only schedule change other than that sort of non-academic time that we're waiting to hear back on them about.
Right.
We have heard from the seniors that they are calling first lunch.
Senior privileges. Senior privileges.
Senior privileges, they're going to book it on first lunch.
Quick question about, will there be dress down days?
So I would love to be able to have dress down days, but it requires that students are in dress code the other days. So if we can get them back in dress code, then I am happy to do dress down. So I guess that's the answer. That's all I can say.
Wonderful. We're really conscious of time. We have tackled, I think, almost all of the questions, if not all of them. If there are any other questions, please feel free to email Molly, Jan, and I after tonight. We are here. Our doors are open. We want to talk to you. We want to keep the communication between our families as well as with our students. And if your student has a question, please encourage her to come and speak with us. We have an open door policy, and we want to hear from them all the time. And the other nice thing is there is a staycation happening. So those of you that are on break next week, your students may be looking for things to do. Campus will be open and your student is welcome to come, and they can even stay for lunch. They just have to tell Miss Hall. And for you parents, you may be looking for a different office space than the one that you are always in. We have plenty of space for you, and we would like to invite you to come and hang out in your own office space, free Wi-Fi and lunch. It's a pretty sweet deal. And we already have a couple family parents that are going to be joining us. So please feel free if you have, if you'd like to join us during the break, we have space for you. We have a lot of wonderful comments. Thank you to everyone for all your wonderful comments about our dedication and all the hard work for our school. We are so appreciative of having the opportunity to educate, enlighten, and empower your daughter. And it's a job that we take incredibly seriously, and one that we do with honor and recognize that privilege. Anything else, Molly, Jan?
I just want to say thank you for continuing to show up and working in partnership with us. We can't do this alone, and we really do appreciate all of the help and that you provide. It keeps us going for sure. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. For your kids. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
You have amazing, amazing children.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful night.
Have a good evening.
Bye, everybody.
All of me loves all of you. Love your curves and all your edges, all your perfect imperfections. Give your all to me. I'll give my all to you. You're my end and my beginning. Even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause I give you all of me, and you give me all of you. Oh.
Sarah.
Sarah doesn't even know. Her
How
computer's
many
over there.
times do I have to tell you? Even when you're crying, you're beautiful too. The world is beating you down. I'm around for every mood. You're my
Is she even listening, or is she just?
No, she's not even here. Her computer's right there. It's right there.
Oh, that's
We'll
funny.
just shut it off.
Oh my God, she's a lot.
That's so funny.
I thought she was waiting to critique us or
Well,
something.
that's what I thought. I was getting a little nervous if I had said something wrong. So
No.
there it all.